Welcome to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman, the podcast dedicated to helping you build the business of your dreams and live the life you always hoped for, with valuable and fun tips and info to make your life easier and more fun. And now, here's your host, a man who sprinkles metal shavings on his breakfast cereal just for fun, Jason Silverman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. I'm your host, Jason Silverman, and I'm thrilled to share some time with you today. As you know, I'm always on the hunt for interesting as well as super smart real deal guests, and I got to tell you, today's show is a total winner. I want to introduce my listeners to somebody who's truly been there and done that, and I'm excited to pick his brain for your and my benefit as well today. Now, for the folks who I work with in any of my coaching programs or through Powerful Works Character Development or All-Star Cheer Sites or the Jason's Army Mastermind Group, you know how much I focus on digital marketing that works, right? Well, this show is going to share with us some important keystones that, quite honestly, you need to hear. So today it's going to be my honor and privilege to share an amazing resource with you. You're going to love today's guest. He's got a ton of valuable information about what I consider to be really some of the missing links to many who live in that after-school activity world, like so many of my listeners do. So I want you to strap yourself in. Today's show is going to be a blast. As I'm sure you already know, I'm committed to helping business owners just like you to become more successful, enjoy your career more, and in general, make your life significantly more fun. We only get one ride on this merry-go-round, folks. Let's make sure it's one hell of a ride, shall we? Alrighty, it is now that time. I want you to stop surfing Facebook, put away your phone, your tablet, your dog, your cat, your spouse, your child, anything that might possibly get in the way of you being able to give 100% focus to this show. You're about to get some great and immediately implementable information, and I don't want you to miss even a second of it. So before we officially get going, let me give you a little bit of background about our guest expert today. Rand Fishkin uses the ludicrous title Wizard of Moz. He's founder and former CEO of Moz, a board member at presentation software startup Haiku Deck, co-author of a pair of books on SEO, and co-founder of inbound.org. Rand's an unsatiable addict of all things content, search, and social on the web, from his multiple blogs to Twitter, Google+, Facebook, LinkedIn, and a shared Instagram account. In his minuscule spare time, he likes to gallivant around the world with Geraldine and then read about it on her superbly enjoyable travel blog. Rand, it is my pleasure to welcome you to The Real Deal. I'm thrilled to have you today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jason. I'm looking forward to it.
Pleasure is mine. So, listen, before we officially get started, for those who haven't had the opportunity and pleasure of reading your blogs, meeting you, or hearing you speak, take a second, share your story with our listeners. What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? Who is Rand Fishkin?
Sure. Well, I think probably the most important thing to know about me is I'm an entrepreneur. I like starting and building things, and I like small things. So I was CEO of Moz for 7 years, from 2007 to 2014, during which time we grew from, no revenue to, right around 30 million in recurring annual revenue and about 150 people. And that's when I stepped down. And I still work at Moz. That's my day-to-day. But I no longer have to lead the troops. I get to follow, and that's been nice for me. My passions are particularly around SEO. That's what I built Moz to do. Moz is an SEO software company. So, for example, if some of your listeners might work with an SEO professional, a consultant or an agency, and many of those folks are likely Moz subscribers. We also, serve a lot of in-house folks, but usually at bigger organizations that have a team of marketers and those kinds of things. And our software is designed to help with SEO specifically. But a ton of what I do is evangelism, not just for Moz, but for search marketing itself. My feeling is that there's a ton of people out there who need great information about how search engines work, about how they can appear in the rankings, and that information is very inaccessible. And I feel it's my privilege, my duty, to bring that to everyone I can.
I love that. And it's so important. And the fact that you said that it is inaccessible, I would agree with wholeheartedly, unless you are truly digging for this information, and then you're not sure what the heck is right or accurate or just a sales page. So it's I'm excited to really dig in with you. So
yeah, and SEO is one of those fields where there's a tremendous amount of good information out there, but there's also some misleading information, and unfortunately, not too dissimilar to the world of politics, right? That there are people with incentives to mislead, right? And some of those are the search engines themselves, and occasionally Google or Google's representatives will say things that folks with experience in the SEO community will sort of scratch their head and say, I don't think that's right, or you're not telling us the whole story there. And so a big part of my job is to try and bring data and transparency as far as I can in this field.
Well, we appreciate that. So tell me this, what type of content is the most effective, for generating leads? And this is really important. Many of the folks who I have the opportunity to work with don't necessarily see themselves as content creators, which I feel is really inaccurate. But, in your estimation, because again, the content really is what helps the search engines find you, correct?
Sometimes. So this is one of the interesting things. So local is one of those weird areas where it is absolutely true that content creation and great content marketing can be a path to search engine success, right? To high rankings and good traffic from search engines, all those kinds of things. However, in the local space specifically, let's say we're talking about a search like, let's try, I took karate when I was a kid. Let's see if my old dojo shows up. So karate school, Seattle. I live in Seattle, Washington, so we'll start with that. Okay, perfect. Here we go. So in Seattle, when I perform this search for Karate School Seattle in Google, the first results that I see are a map, right, a sort of a Google map style listing, and then three what Google calls places or maps listings. Before I see, Yelp, Yelp's list of best martial arts schools, sort of the classic 10 blue links style results. And this is true for many, many local searches. Here's the interesting part. When it comes to those maps listings, the ones that appear very prominently, on your phone or on your desktop when you perform this search below that map, those have very little to do with the content. In fact, many of the websites that will rank in there and that will perform extremely well don't actually have much or any content at all. And I would not advise someone who is looking to rank in those specific results that they need content to do well. Those results are governed by a very different set of algorithmic principles. And that's, we can dive into it if you like, but that's why I'm saying, right, sort of sometimes content is key and helps you certainly for a lot of types of rankings. On maps and local specifically, not always the case.
So with the maps, and again, this is probably more for my interest level, but is that more based on local than where the typical 10 that follow it?
Yeah. So the factors, the ranking factors that go into what we've historically in the SEO field called the local pack, right, or local packs. Those are dictated by a few different things. One, the name of the business actually helps. So in this case, Google understands that martial arts and karate are related, and so they will. They're showing me martial arts schools as well as the Feminist Karate Union, which I hadn't heard of before. Maybe it is. I guess that is a school. But the interesting part about those is that the business name and the search query can have some matchup. So, for example, if I searched for Feminist Karate Union is definitely going to come up specifically because Google will think I'm looking for that business name. Some folks have gamed this a little bit by naming their business something generic to capture those searches, and that unfortunately does kind of still work in Google. Another big thing in there is location. So Google has something called the centroid, right? They consider what they consider the center of the location you searched for. So if I look at a neighborhood like Capitol Hill, Google has this center point geographically that they consider the center of Capitol Hill. And so if I search for something like Thai restaurant, Capitol Hill, Google is likely to bias to show me ones that are closer to that centroid versus ones that are further out. And that's true for all regions. If you do that at a state level, if you do it at a city level, a county level, so location matters. Another big important one, in fact, probably one of the most important ones, is listing, or what's called citation, consistency and coverage. So essentially, Google has access to all these different data sources. They look at things like, Yellow Pages and Yelp and, maybe TripAdvisor, the local newspaper, whether you're in the, a local listing directory or a Chamber of Commerce listing source. And then they'll also go out to all these data aggregators, places like Factual and Axiom and Infogroup and others. And then they'll also look at their own data from Google Maps, right? So if you've claimed your Google Maps or your Google My Business listing, it shows up in Google Maps. And they look for consistency. So essentially, does your business always have the same name? Does it always have the same phone number? Always has the same hours? Always has the same address? Always is in the same category? That matters. That consistency matters a ton to Google's local results. And again, is a big ranking factor. And, many of your listeners have probably heard of companies like Yext or Whitespark, or maybe even Moz's product, which is called Moz Local. And what those services do is essentially they go to all these listing aggregators and make sure to update your information, your business information, so that you are A, listed in all those places, B, listed correctly, and C, any changes that happen, you get notified or updated of. And that that's a big business in the local SEO world.
Absolutely, no, I've seen that. All right, so that's what actually adds to that top tier little local pack.
Yeah, and there's a few other things. Links do matter. So links from other websites to your website matter. That they matter for both the local listings and what we call the organic results, the like 10 blue link style results. And then there's a couple of other things. Google will consider some elements of content on the page depending on the keyword query. So, for example, if you're a karate school, but you never mention, the word children or kids or ages or something like that, they might be less likely to return you in a search for, youth karate school or something related to that. So there are some elements of the words and phrases you use on the page to tell Google what you're about as well.
That makes sense. So pretty much everything counts.
Lots of things count. The weird part is, this is a complex algorithm. It absolutely is. But doing local SEO is actually not that terribly hard. It is, it's a matter of having the knowledge and understanding what Google needs, and then going through the process of sort of, claiming all these listings and make sure you're updated at all these places. And that you have the consistency. And then it's a matter of doing some marketing so that people write about you on the web, and so that you're listed in all the places that you might expect to be listed. Get some links, right? It's a process, but it's not. It is not calculus, right? It's not. I would say it's accessible to anyone who puts in the time and effort to do it. But it is very frequently outsourced because that knowledge and the pain in the butt process itself just requires a lot of effort.
Well, and doing it wrong doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you do it wrong, and things can get real bad. I'll tell you one of the worst stories, one of the toughest stories that we ever had, specifically around local SEO. And I think this is a challenge, especially for folks who have multiple businesses or have multiple locations, right? Which, as you can imagine, that might be a real pain, right? Because then Google gets confused as to which one's being referred to and all these kinds of things. Well, this happened here in Seattle to a not-for-profit organization that my wife and I have helped and contributed to for many years. It's called Seattle Children's Hospital. And, for the Northwest region and even for a lot of the Western United States, Seattle Children's is a place where a lot of families with very sick or terminally ill children go. And they had a big problem with Google Maps. So if you searched for, I think it was Seattle Children's Radiology, Google Maps would bring back a Seattle Children's location that was different than the radiology department. So Children's has, 3 or 4 major locations around the Seattle area. So the problem was parents were driving their kids to the wrong hospital for their radiology appointments. And as you might imagine, in some cases that is potentially costing kids their life.
Yeah, that's a mistake.
Yeah, that's as severely messed up a situation as you can encounter in the local SEO world. And certainly a very high priority one. So in that case, when we saw this problem, I actually reached out to some contacts at Google. And I would say folks at Google are usually pretty good at not replying to anything. In this case, they were awesome. They replied right away. They fixed it right away.
Wow.
And I think they understood the importance. But, certainly you can apply that to a much less serious thing. Like, if you are running an after-school program and you have 3 or 4 locations, and Google gets confused about which one is which and what the hours are of which one and which website to point to, that can be a real pain. And so, claiming the listings correctly, getting that information in there, making sure it's consistent across all these different websites, many of these websites won't even ask you. They'll scrape the content from somewhere else, right? They'll crawl a website, they'll put it into what they think is an accurate database. That could be totally wrong. Now you have to go in and update it. That sort of thing happens. And then Google will see their listing for you and think that one's wrong, that kind of thing.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It really is on so many levels, but this is actually really cool. And I think that, for those listening, you're getting this is a real peek at actually how this stuff works. I think a lot of folks tend to believe that Google is simply magic, and you enter something in there, and hopefully the right stuff comes out, and all the people that are offering some sort of service are offering something the right way. So this is cool. I want to jump into content though, because I think that there's got to be, at some level, right? There is some form of content that's got to be effective for folks though, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about, content will help you in 2 big ways. One, content will help you in terms of earning all of the sort of links and citation, the attention, the amplification, right, and sharing that you desperately need when you're building the reputation of your business, right? So that content is not just for search engines to find, but it certainly can be helpful, right? If I search for, something like after-school programs for, programming in Seattle, it's not a maps listing that comes up, right? It's not a list of local businesses. It's going to be people like codingwithkids.com who writes specifically about this, right? Or a website like parentmap.com who provides a bunch of, directory information around this. Or it's going to be someone like the Rakes Foundation who, has a program here in Seattle that they've written about eloquently and that provides a bunch of detail. And they have lots of links from computer science schools and resources and blogs and other websites all over that point to them. And Google's very much ranking them, not just based on the content, but on how well the content has performed and how it's been amplified and how people have linked to it. And so that's absolutely crucial.
Okay. Well, then selfishly speaking, how often should, owners or whoever be creating content, and where do you feel like that content should go?
Yeah. The answer is it depends. It depends a lot. But the consideration set that I would put into that are a few things. One, I would think about whether this content is evergreen or whether it is temporal in nature. And what I mean by that is if the programming courses and the way that the industry is going and how parents are perceiving, different types of programming classes or what they're looking for their kids or what the kids themselves are looking for, if those things change, your content should change as well. So that could be something that you update annually. If your programs are changing monthly, that would be something you might update monthly. But you could certainly imagine that you might write a beginner's guide to teaching kids to code. And that could be a resource that you might write once and put a tremendous amount of effort in. And, you'd have lots of screenshots and you'd have links out to places and you'd recommend different resources or maybe games that kids might play when they're young and different things for different age groups. You might imagine writing that guide once and updating it only every, year or two, and not rewriting it for maybe 4 or 5 years, right? So that piece of content could be very evergreen versus something like which coding classes are being offered in the Seattle area, or what are the hottest programming languages that people are hiring on and that are being taught in high schools, and how can you help your son or daughter to advance their skills in that, and that might be something you're updating every month.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. So are we talking about this more as a blog post? Are we talking about this as a video? Is there a particular media from a search perspective that would be more effective?
Yeah. So for every different type of, I would say, question that you're answering or search query that you're seeking to target, you are going to want to consider content format in that equation. So, for example, let's go back to the computer programming classes, right? You could certainly imagine that many kids will be searching on YouTube for, in fact, let's go to YouTube and we can figure out learn to code in Python. Great. So this would be an awesome opportunity. If you had a video that performed well here, in fact, someone does. This is great. So the fourth result down that I see is learning to code with Python from Kids Can Code, right? And Kids Can Code has a playlist of 14 different videos. They're, showing what is programming and, drawing with turtles and all sorts of other stuff. If you are the owner of, a school and you're creating video content or you're creating content that you're going to be showing to to the kids in your program anyway, why not record some of it and put it on YouTube and do some marketing for that? A few thousand views will probably get you ranking well for a search query like this. And YouTube cares about a few things. They care about the popularity of the video. They care about the recency when it was created. They certainly care about the content, and they will do, an audio analysis of the text, or you can upload a transcript to them. They care about people who link to it and embed it on their websites, of course, and so you embedding it on your own website will certainly help with that. So that is a great opportunity on the video side. But, if I search for learn to code in Python in Google itself, I am not seeing Google return video results there. Right? And so I might think about, all right, what is Google actually returning to searchers here? Let me try and, fit my content to the preferences that the search engines are showing. And Google is pretty smart. If people engaged very heavily with videos when this search query was performed, they would show those videos in the results. Since they're not, that probably means people here are looking for, websites like Code Academy or, Python.org or Code School or something like that.
So, Rand, I want to interrupt with a question that, I've seen a lot of folks talking about, well, you can game the system. You can go out to Fiverr and buy 1 million views of your video. can you just talk about why that's a pretty horrible idea?
Yeah. So, well, let's see. It depends on what you're doing. There are some things you can game, and there are some things you cannot game. Google, as an entity, and they certainly own YouTube as well, they are exceptionally good at detecting and removing the impact of web spam. 10 years ago, I think we could have a reasonable conversation where you might say, well, Rand, there's a lot of spam that works, and maybe spam is an avenue that I consider. Today, Google, thanks to advances in machine learning, which they certainly use for spam detection, right, and the tremendous amounts of data sets that they have about spam versus legitimate content, their ability to use user and usage data. So, for example, let's say you did fool Google, right? Maybe you fooled Google into thinking that your video had 1 million views and nobody else had 1 million views. They all have like 10,000 views. So you are just killing it with this Learn to Code video. Immediately after Google had ranked that piece of content, they would quickly see that, in fact, it was quite poor in quality, right? And people were not engaging with it to the same degree, right? They were clicking the back button. They were not saving and sharing. They weren't taking screenshots. They weren't commenting. They weren't giving a little thumbs up in YouTube at the same rates that they were with other videos of its type. And so you would quickly find that Google would be able to flag this. And then they would not just flag the video, but if they saw this behavior, they'd probably flag the entire account, right? So now not just your YouTube account, but the Gmail account your YouTube account is connected to, the calendar account that's connected to, they'd be suspicious of anything you might do, right? Any domains you own or register, and they have patent applications that specifically go to this where they say, hey, if we've seen spam activity from someone on one platform, we can tie that person's identity to, all sorts of other things and then try and discount anything that they do. So, or at least look more skeptically at it. So I would urge you not to create a terrible reputation with yourself and Google. That is, you are harming future you quite a bit by trying to game these systems. And certainly Fiverr is, the bottom of the barrel when it comes to spam attempts.
Well, I mean, again, I've heard people say, oh, not to worry, I'm going to get, 10,000 views on my video and I'm going to get ranked and a lot of that. I'm like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. I mean, the best way to do that, very honestly, the very best way to do that is to build up an email list of people who love what you do and love sharing what you do and email them when you launch new things, right? Then you really will get high quality, engaged people who care about what you're doing, who want to share it, paying attention to you and providing real user and usage data engaged signals to Google.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, I have another question for you. And I've heard this term before, but I don't know that it's really been defined well. So what is comment marketing?
Sure. So comment marketing is basically the practice of saying, hey, there are lots of blogs and news sites, forums, discussion sites, even social media, right? You could consider, commenting on Facebook posts or on commenting on tweet updates to be forms of comment marketing. And you're essentially saying, hey, by participating in all these communities or in the right communities for me, I can attract the attention and hopefully the engagement and build some trust and likability and recognition with influential folks who create this content and share it on their blogs and websites, as well as people who are reading and engaging with that content in the comments. Comment marketing is something that's been spammed a ton and does get a lot of spam, but it is a huge opportunity if you're not spamming. I'm sure all of us can probably recall, reading a blog post, scrolling down to the bottom and seeing a comment and thinking, oh, man, that is so thoughtful. That is exactly how I feel. That is so much better said than I could have done it. I wonder who this person is, right? And then you might click on their profile and go to their website, or you might click on their profile and follow them on Twitter, or subscribe to their Facebook page, or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And that that is essentially the principle by which comment marketing operates. You're not commenting to leave a link to your site to try and fool Google into thinking you have lots of links. Those links will not carry weight anyway. Every comment section on the web where anyone can leave an open link, those links will be no followed, which means Google doesn't count them.
Got it.
Neither do any of the other search engines. So your goal is not leave a link. Your goal is engage people, make them recognize you, build some camaraderie and some trust.
That makes a whole lot of sense. All right, Rand, it's time for our resource of the week. So tell me this: how can my listeners find out more about you and more about Moz? What's the best place to send them?
Sure. So Moz.com is our website. If you are specifically looking for local information, you can go to Moz.com/local. And if you would like to ask me questions or follow along in the deep, dark world of SEO, the best place to do that for me is Twitter. I'm at Rand Fish.
Perfect. And folks, if you're streaming this off of the blog page, just click through directly on the show notes, and you'll have all of that. Fabulous. All right, Rand, I always like to end my podcast with what I consider to be a telling question. So, if you could give business owners just one solid piece of advice to either help their business or, more importantly, help them live a better life, what would that piece of advice be?
I think my piece of advice would be to look for incremental improvement rather than overnight transformational wins. I think that a lot of times, American society and, our media and culture focus on these sort of big life-changing events. This person was working hard for all these years and then all of a sudden something big happened, right? And unfortunately, I think that that's not actually the way to have success in business or in life or in anything you're trying to improve. Trying to improve a relationship, trying to improve your health. Incremental improvement is really the path, and it's not nearly as sexy or as Hollywood, but it is transformational over time. It's a really powerful thing. So if you can find a way to improve your website or improve your rankings or improve your content, improve your business just a tiny bit every week or every month, that incremental improvement over time can build up into something really special.
That's fabulous. Rand, thank you so much for joining me today. I know how busy your schedule is, so it means the world to me that you share some of your time and a whole bunch of your wisdom. This has been fabulous.
Awesome. I'm thrilled to join you, Jason.
Folks, that's all the time we've got today. Thanks so much for tuning into The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. For more info about private coaching or to see if you'd benefit from one of my mastermind groups, visit me over at www.jasonmsilverman.com. I look forward to helping you achieve the success that you truly deserve. Until next time, let me leave you with this. Get out there and be the real deal. Set a goal, make a plan, work like hell towards it, and achieve the success that's waiting for you. Now's the time. Get out there and make it happen. This has been Jason Silverman, and I hope you have a spectacular week.
You've been listening to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. To access the great resources mentioned in the show and for information on coaching and mastermind group opportunities with Jason, please visit jasonmsilverman.com.